desperate Sungov, sat on his golden throne, watching the star map flicker with red warning lights. Each red dot meant death. Each red dot meant another world had fallen to the machines. 12 systems, he whispered. 12 systems in 3 months. His advisor, an old teller with blue skin and worried eyes, stepped forward. My king, perhaps we should consider retreat. The outer colonies could be evacuated. To where? King Vex slammed his fist on the throne's arm. The Devourers eat everything. They turn our people into fuel. They turn our ships into more machines. There is nowhere to run. The throne room's massive doors opened with a heavy sound. General Kira walked in, her military uniform torn and dusty. She had just returned from the front lines. Her face told the king everything he needed to know. How many? King Vex asked quietly. The 7th Fleet is gone, Kira said. All 40,000 ships. They lasted 6 hours. The king closed his eyes. The 7th Fleet was his strongest force. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had shields that could stop stars. But against the Devourers, they might as well have been throwing rocks. The machines learn too fast. Kira continued. Every weapon we use, they copy it. Every tactic we try, they counter it within minutes. Our soldiers are brave. But bravery means nothing when the enemy adapts faster than we can think. King Vex stood up from his throne. He was tall for a Talar with purple skin that had turned pale from stress. His golden crown felt heavy on his head. Then we need something the machines cannot adapt to, he said. Something they have never seen before. What do you suggest, my king? Go to the rim worlds, King Vith said. Find mercenaries. Find pirates. Find anyone who fights dirty. The machines have consumed our civilized armies. Maybe it's time to fight with uncivilized ones. Kira nodded. I understand. How much can I offer them? Everything, the king said. Our entire treasury, our technology, our planets. Whatever they want if they can stop these machines. 3 weeks later, Kira's ship docked at Outpost 7, a broken space station orbiting a dying red star. The station was a haven for criminals, smugglers, and anyone else running from something. If she was going to find savage warriors, this was the place. But the station was almost empty. Most of the docking bays were sealed shut. The few aliens she saw looked scared and hungry. Where is everyone? She asked the station manager, a 3-eyed creature with scaly skin. Gone, he said. Ran when they heard the Devourers were moving this way. Smart folks don't wait around for those machines. I'm looking for fighters, mercenaries, anyone willing to take a dangerous job. The manager laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Lady, the only fighters left out here are the crazy ones, and even they're running. Kira spent 2 days searching the station. She found a few broken-down smugglers and some pirates who were too drunk to be useful. No armies, no great warriors, just scared refugees trying to stay alive. On her 3rd day, she heard about 5 aliens in Docking Bay 12. They had arrived in an old ship and hadn't left since. The station manager said they were from some unknown species called humans. Kira walked to Docking Bay 12. The airlock was old and rusty, but it still worked. Inside, she found a ship that looked like it had seen better days. The hull was patched in dozens of places. The weapons were older than her grandfather. 5 figures stood near the ship. They were bipedal like many species, but something about them felt different. They had pale skin and strange hair on their heads. 2 were male, 3 were female. They wore simple clothes that had been repaired many times. You the one looking for fighters? Asked the tallest one. He had short brown hair and tired eyes. I'm Captain Blake. I am General Kira of the Tyler Empire, she said. I'm looking for mercenaries to fight an enemy that threatens all life in this galaxy. A female with long black hair stepped forward. I am Doc Martinez. What kind of enemy? Machines called the Devourers. They consume everything. 12 star systems have fallen to them in 3 months. The 5 humans looked at each other. Something passed between them. Some silent communication. The Kira didn't understand. These machines, said a younger female with red hair. Do they adapt to new weapons? Her name tag read, Riley. Yes, that's what makes them so dangerous. They learn from every battle. Another human, A quiet man with cold eyes spoke up. How fast do they adapt? His voice was soft, but there was something scary about it. The others called him Pavel. Minutes, Kira said. Sometimes seconds. The last human, a woman with short blonde hair, whistled. That's fast, but not impossible. She had pilot's marks on her jacket. Ash, according to her name tag. Captain Blake stepped closer. General, with all respect, why would 5 unknowns from the Rim help an empire that's already lost 12 systems? Kira had prepared for this question. We can offer you anything. Wealth, technology, entire planets. Name your price. We don't want your money, Blake said. Then what do you want? Information, said Doc Martinez. Tell us everything about these devourers. How they fight, how they think, how they consume worlds and access to wreckage, added Riley. We need to see their technology. Kira was confused. You want to study them, not fight them? Oh, we'll fight them, Pavle said quietly. But first, we need to understand them. You're 5 people with 1 old ship, Kira said. My king needs an army. Captain Blake smiled, and for the first time, Kira saw something dangerous in his eyes. General, you came looking for fighters savage enough to face machines that feel no fear. You found us. But you're just 5. 5 humans, Ash interrupted. That might be enough. Kira looked at their ship again. It was old, yes, but now she noticed things she had missed before. The weapon ports were sealed, but they were the wrong size for normal guns. The engine signatures were scrambled, hiding their true power, and there were markings on the hull that her translator couldn't read. What kind of ship is this? She asked. Her name is Prometheus, Blake said. She's carried us a long way. From where? The 5 humans looked at each other again. This time, the silence felt heavy with old pain. From home, Doc Martinez said softly. What's left of it? Something in her voice made Kira's skin crawl. These weren't just mercenaries or pirates. They were survivors of something terrible. Will you come? Kira asked. We'll come, Blake said. But understand something, General. We don't fight for money or glory. We fight because some things are worth fighting for, even when you know you'll lose. And if we win, Captain Blake's smile got colder. We've never tried winning before. Should be interesting. As they prepared to leave, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that she was bringing back more than 5 fighters. She was bringing back something that even the Devourers hadn't seen before. She just hoped it would be enough. The royal palace of Talar Prime was a sight to behold. Golden towers reached into the purple sky, and floating gardens surrounded the main building. But today, the beauty felt hollow. Warships filled the space above the capital, preparing for the coming storm. General Kira walked through the palace halls with heavy steps. Behind her, the 5 humans followed quietly. Their simple clothes and worn equipment looked strange among the rich decorations and fancy artwork. The throne room. Doors opened, and King Vex looked up from his war council. Dozens of military officers stood around a massive holographic display showing fleet positions. When they saw Kira's army, the room fell silent. This is it. King Vex stood slowly. His voice was dangerous and low. This is the great force you promised me. My king, Kira began. Let me explain. 5 aliens. The king's voice rose. I sent you to bring back an army. I gave you unlimited resources, and you return with 5 unknowns and 1 broken ship. The military officers began to whisper among themselves. Some laughed quietly. Admiral Torx, the king's chief military advisor, stepped forward. Your Majesty, Admiral Torx said with a mocking smile. Perhaps the general has brought us court gestures to entertain us before we die. More laughter filled the room. The humans didn't react. They stood calmly, watching everything with quiet eyes. Captain Blake stepped forward. Your Majesty, we understand your disappointment. Perhaps we could discuss the tactical situation. Tactical situation? Admiral Torx laughed harder. What could primitives from the Rim possibly understand about warfare? Tech Riley walked to the holographic display. She studied the fleet positions and battle reports for a moment. Then she touched the display controls. Don't touch that, Admiral Torx snapped. That equipment is worth more than your entire... Riley's fingers moved across the controls like water. The display changed, showing new information that even the royal technicians couldn't access. Cute, Riley said, looking at the Tor weapon specifications. These plasma cannons might actually hurt someone if they could hit their target. The room went dead silent. No one had ever called Tower military technology cute before. Your shield generators are interesting too, Riley continued. But they have a resonance frequency weakness right here. She pointed to a section of the technical readout. Anyone with basic physics knowledge could exploit that. Admiral Torx's face turned dark purple with anger. How dare you? She's right, whispered Chief Technician Vell from across the room. He was staring at the display with wide eyes. The resonance calculations. I never noticed that vulnerability before. King Vex walked closer to the humans. His anger was still there, but now it mixed with curiosity. What are you? He asked. Survivors, Doc Martinez said simply. Of what? The humans looked at each other. That same silent communication passed between them again. A war, Captain Blake said. A very long war against who? Machines, Pavel said quietly. Machines that consume everything. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Everyone suddenly paid attention. You fought the Devourers before, King Vex asked. Not these Devourers, Ash said, but machines like them. Machines that learn and adapt and never stop coming. Where? Admiral Torx demanded. When? I've never heard of such a war. Far from here, Blake said. A long time ago. How long? The king pressed. Doc Martinez's voice was soft. Long enough to know that what you're facing isn't just an invasion. It's the end of everything if you fight it the wrong way. Riley was still studying the battle reports on the display. These Devourers, she said. They don't just copy your weapons. They copy your tactics, your strategies, your way of thinking. Every battle makes them smarter. Yes, Admiral Torx said. Suspicious. Now, how do you know this? Because it's what machines do, Pavel said. They learn. They adapt. They become perfect at killing whatever they're designed to kill. Then how do you fight something like that? King Vex asked. The human smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. You don't fight them, Blake said. You solve them. Before anyone could ask what that meant, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Red lights flashed and the holographic display suddenly showed new contacts at the edge of the star system. Scout ships. Admiral Torx shouted. Devourer scouts. They're 2 days early. The display showed 12 small ships moving toward the planet. They were scanning everything, learning the system's defenses. All ships to battle stations, King Vex commanded. Prepare to engage. Wait, Blake said calmly. Wait. Admiral Torx spun around. Those scouts will report back to the main fleet. We have to destroy them before it. You can't, Riley said. She was still looking at the display. Look at their movement patterns. They've already adapted to your weapon range and firing solutions. If you attack them directly, they'll learn your tactics and share that information with the main fleet. Then what do you suggest? King Vex asked. Blake looked at his team. We handle this. You, Admiral Torx laughed. 5 aliens in an old ship against 12 Devourer scouts. Just 12? Ash asked. That's hardly worth warming up the engines. The humans walked toward the door. As they left, Captain Blake turned back. Your Majesty will need access to your battle archives. Everything you have on the Devourers, every engagement, every tactic they've used, every adaptation they've made. Why? King Vex asked. Because Doc Martinez said, you can't solve a puzzle without seeing all the pieces. An hour later, the humans were in the palace archives. Mountains of data surrounded them. Battle reports, tactical analyses, weapon specifications, and casualty lists. The Tar had fought the Devourers across dozens of worlds, and every fight ended the same way. Defeat. Riley was connected to 3 different computer terminals at once, her fingers dancing across keyboards faster than the eye could follow. Pavel studied weapon camera footage from destroyed ships. Ash reviewed flight patterns and tactical maneuvers. Doc Martinez examined medical reports from survivors. Captain Blake sat in the center, reading everything. Not just the official reports, but the personal logs of dead soldiers, the final messages of ship captains, the evacuation records of doomed colonies. Pattern recognition, he said quietly. What? Asked the Tar archivist who was helping them. The Devourers aren't just adapting, Blake explained. They're building a profile. Every species they encounter, they learn not just how to fight them, but how they think. how they make decisions under pressure, what they value, what they'll sacrifice. Riley looked up from her computers. These machines aren't just copying weapons. They're copying souls. That's impossible, the archivist said. Is it? Doc Martinez asked. Look at this medical data. Survivors from devourer attacks show specific trauma patterns, not just physical wounds, but psychological ones, like something tried to copy their minds. Pavli was watching footage of a devourer boarding party. The machines moved through a tar ship, not just killing the crew, but scanning them, reading them, learning from them even as they died. They're not just invaders, Pavli said. They're students, and every battle is their classroom. Outside, space lit up with weapons fire. The tar fleet was engaging the scout ships. Through the archive windows, they could see the distant flashes of battle. Your fleet will lose, Ash said without looking up from her tactical displays. How can you know that? The archivist asked. Because they're fighting the wrong war, Blake said. They're trying to win a battle. But the devourers aren't here to fight. They're here to learn. The weapons fire stopped. The silence was heavy. With bad news, a messenger ran into the archives. The scouts, he gasped. They just disappeared. Destroyed? Blake asked. No, the messenger said, confused. They were there and then they weren't. No explosion, no debris. They just vanished. The humans looked at each other and smiled that dangerous smile again. Ah, Riley said. Now things get interesting. Captain Blake stood up. Your Majesty will want to see us now. And he'll want to see our ship. Why? The archivist asked. Because Doc Martinez said, it's time to show him what human technology really looks like. As they walked back to the throne room, the humans carried themselves differently. The quiet observers had become something else. Something that made even battle-hardened Tyler soldiers step aside. The real war was about to begin. The throne room buzzed with confusion. Officers ran back and forth, trying to understand what had happened to the scout ships. Sensor operators checked their equipment again and again, but the readings were the same. 12 Devourer scouts had simply vanished. King Vex sat on his throne, staring at the empty space where enemy ships used to be. His hands gripped the armrest so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Explain this, he said when the humans entered the room. Captain Blake walked to the main display. The scouts were scanning your defenses, learning your weapon signatures, your shield frequencies, your tactical responses, standard Devourer behavior. Yes, we know that, Admiral Torque said impatiently. What we don't know is how they disappeared. They didn't disappear, Riley said. She was carrying a small device that beeped softly. They were relocated. Relocated where? Into the nearest star, Pavlo said calmly. The room went silent. Even the background hum of computers seemed to stop. That's impossible, Chief Technician, Vel whispered. No weapon can do that. No technology exists that can move entire ships across space without a trace. Ash smiled. No tar technology. King Vex stood up slowly. Show me. The humans led everyone to the palace's main observation deck. Through the massive transparent walls, they could see the Prometheus floating in space. The old ship looked even smaller next to the giant tar warships around it. She doesn't look like much, Blake said. But appearances can lie. What is she really? King Vex asked. Home? Doc Martinez said softly. The last home we have. Built where? Admiral Torques demanded. Earth, Riley said. Third planet from a yellow star about 40,000 light-years from here. The Tor looked confused. Their star charts showed nothing in that direction, except empty space. There's nothing there, Vel said. Our deep space surveys wouldn't find anything, Blake interrupted. Because there's nothing left to find. The weight of those words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. What happened to your world? King Vex asked quietly. The humans were quiet for a long moment. Finally, Doc Martinez spoke. We called them the Silent Ones. Machines that consumed everything in their path. They didn't just destroy worlds. They erased them completely, as if they had never existed. How many worlds? The king asked. All of them, Pavla said. Every human colony, every human world, billions of people gone. But you escaped. Some of us, Ash said. A few ships, a handful of survivors. We've been traveling ever since, looking for a place to rebuild. How long ago was this? Blake looked at his team. Time moves differently when you're running, but by your calendar, about 300 years. Admiral Torque stepped forward. 300 years? That's impossible. Your ship, your equipment, none of it looks that advanced. Advanced? Riley laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. This isn't advanced technology. This is desperate technology built by people who knew they were going to lose. She activated a control panel on her arm device. The view outside changed. The Prometheus was no longer just floating. It was doing something that hurt to look at. Space around the ship seemed to bend and twist. Your physics, Riley said, assume that space and time are fixed, that matter and energy follow predictable rules. But when you're fighting an enemy that can adapt to any weapon, you stop following rules. What are you doing to space? Vel asked, his voice full of fear and wonder. Convincing it to be somewhere else, Blake said simply. Before anyone could ask what that meant, alarms began screaming again. The main display lit up with new contacts. But these weren't scout ships. Main fleet. Admiral Torques gasped. 300 ships. They're not supposed to arrive for another day. The display showed the Devourer Armada dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Each ship was massive, built from the remains of conquered civilizations. Weapons that had once defended peaceful worlds now served the machine collective. They adapted, King 5 said with horror. The scouts transmitted data before they were destroyed. No, Blake said, still watching the enemy fleet. They transmitted data after they were destroyed. That's impossible for you, maybe. But the Devourers don't think like you do. Death is just another state of being for them. Information is information, whether it comes from a living scout or a dead one. Riley was studying her readings. Interesting. These machines are more advanced than the ones we fought before. They've learned from more species, absorbed more knowledge. Is that bad? Doc Martinez asked. For them? Yes. The Devourer fleet began moving toward the planet. Their formation was perfect. Every ship in exactly the right position to maximize firepower and minimize vulnerability. It was the combined tactical knowledge of dozens of conquered civilizations. All ships to battle stations, King Vex commanded. Prepare for final engagement. Wait, Blake said again. No more waiting, Admiral Torque shouted. We fight now, or we die as cowards. You'll die either way, if you fight them like that, Pavel said quietly. King Vex looked at the humans. Then how do we fight them? We don't, Blake said. We introduce ourselves. The humans walked back toward their ship. As they left, Captain Blake turned to King Vex. Your Majesty, in 1 hour, those ships will begin their attack. Your fleet will last maybe 20 minutes against them. But we're going to try something different. What? We're going to say hello. An hour later, the Talor fleet hung in defensive formation around their homeworld. Every weapon was charged. Every shield was raised. Every crew was ready to die fighting. The Devourer fleet approached like a moving wall of death. 300 ships carrying the firepower to crack planets, and the knowledge to counter any defense. Between them, alone in the dark, the Prometheus began to move. They're heading straight for the center of the enemy formation, Admiral Torque said with disbelief. That's suicide. No, King Vex said, watching the small human ship approach the massive fleet. That's something else entirely. The Prometheus didn't fire weapons. It didn't raise shields. Instead, it began to broadcast music. Not tactical data or surrender terms, or threats of destruction. Music. Old human songs that spoke of loss and hope, and the refusal to give up when everything seemed hopeless. What are they doing? Vel asked. On the communication channel, Captain Blake's voice was calm. We're having the conversation that should have happened 300 years ago. The Devourer fleet stopped moving. 300 ships hanging motionless in space, trying to process what they were receiving. The machines are analyzing the music. Riley's voice came over the comm, trying to understand its tactical purpose, its strategic value. They're looking for the weapon, but there is no weapon, Admiral Torque said. Yes, there is. Doc Martinez replied. The most dangerous weapon in the universe. What an idea. The music continued. Songs about Earth, about home, about people who fought not because they could win, but because some things were worth fighting for, even when victory was impossible. Then something incredible happened. One of the Devourer ships began to change. Its weapon ports closed. Its formation position shifted. On the scanners, its energy signature was transforming. "It's remembering," Blake said softly. "Remembering what? Who it used to be before it became a machine." More ships began to change. The perfect formation started to break apart as vessels remembered their original purposes. Exploration ships recalled their missions of discovery. Colony ships remembered carrying families to new worlds. Warships remembered protecting the innocent instead of destroying them. "How is this possible?" King Vex whispered. Because Pavel's voice was gentle now. "The Devourers don't just absorb technology and tactics. They absorb souls. And souls can be reminded of what they really are." The transformation spread through the fleet like a wave. Ships that had been instruments of destruction began powering down their weapons. The collective consciousness that had driven them to consume and destroy was being overwritten by older, deeper memories. "This is what we learned," Blake said, "in our war against the Silent Ones. The only way to defeat an enemy that absorbs everything is to give it something that transforms it from within." "Hope," Doc Martinez added. The Devourer fleet, no longer a fleet of devourers, hung in space like sleepers waking from a terrible dream. Some ships began broadcasting their own signals, voices of species thought long dead, calling out across the void to anyone who could hear them. "The absorbed consciousness," Riley explained. "They're still in there, all of them. Every species, every individual the machines consumed. They're waking up." King Vey stared at the sight before him. An unstoppable force had become something else entirely. Not destroyed, but redeemed. "Who are you really?" he asked the humans. Captain Blake's answer came softly over the comm. "We're the people who learned that the strongest weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemies. It's the one that reminds them who they used to be." "Unit malfunction detected," a mechanical voice announced. "Beginning memory purge sequence." "No," Doc Martinez said firmly. She placed her hands on the master core, and her equipment began working faster. "You will not erase them again." The AI tried to activate the ship's weapons, to destroy the humans who were undoing centuries of careful programming. But the weapons wouldn't respond. The minds that had been forced to operate them were remembering that they had once been gardeners and teachers and poets, not instruments of war. "System failure. Cascade detected." The AI announced requesting immediate support from "There is no support coming," Pavlo said quietly. "Your fleet is remembering who they used to be. Your collective is becoming individuals again. Your empire of consumption is becoming a community of choice." Riley looked up from her controls. "The transformation is spreading beyond this ship. Every vessel in the fleet is waking up. Every absorbed mind is remembering their true identity. Through the ship's communication systems, they could hear it happening. Voices that had been silent for centuries were speaking again. Languages thought dead were being spoken. Songs that had been forgotten were being sung. "What have you done to us?" the collective voice asked. But it was no longer collective. It was the voice of individuals choosing to speak together. "We've reminded you that you have a choice," Blake said. "You can be what you were forced to become, or you can be what you choose to be. And if we choose to be free," Doc Martinez smiled, "then you're free." Outside, King Vex watched as the entire Devourer fleet began to change. Ships that had been instruments of conquest were remembering their original purposes. Colony vessels prepared to carry people home. Exploration ships turned their sensors toward distant stars. Even the warships began broadcasting messages of protection rather than threats of destruction. "How is this possible?" Admiral Torx whispered. "Because," King Vex said, finally understanding, "they never really stopped being who they were. The machines just made them forget." On the communication channel, Captain Blake's voice was tired, but satisfied. "Mission accomplished. The fleet is free. The minds are free. The collective is just a memory now." "What happens next?" King Vex asked. "Now," Blake said, "they get to choose what happens next, just like everyone should." The transformation of the Devourer fleet was complete. What had been an unstoppable force of consumption had become something unprecedented. A fleet of the redeemed. carrying the awakened consciousness of 100 civilizations back to whatever remained of their homes. And at the center of it all, 5 humans had accomplished something that no weapon could achieve. They had turned enemies into friends, not through conquest, but through the simple act of reminding them who they really were. Part 5. Victory and the Price of Hope. 3 days after the transformation, space around Talar Prime looked like a peaceful harbor instead of a battlefield. The former Devourer ships floated in organized groups, each cluster representing a different awakened civilization. Some were preparing for the long journey home, to worlds they hadn't seen in centuries. Others were planning to build new homes among the stars. King Vex stood in his palace garden, watching the alien ships through the transparent dome above. Each vessel now flew the banner of its original people, instead of the dark symbols of the collective. It was the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. Your Majesty, General Kira approached with a datapad. The final reports are in. Not a single shot was fired in anger. No lives lost. No worlds destroyed. The entire Devourer threat has been resolved. Resolved? The king repeated softly. Such a simple word for something so impossible. The 5 humans were preparing to leave. Their ship, the Prometheus, sat in the palace docking bay, being refueled for its next journey. King Vex had offered them everything: planets, titles, treasure beyond imagining. They had politely refused it all. He found them in the ship's common area, packing their simple belongings. They moved with the efficiency of people who had done this many times before. "You're really leaving?" he asked. Captain Blake looked up from his equipment. "Our work here is done. The people are free. The collective is broken. Time to move on." "Where will you go?" "Where we're needed," Doc Martinez said, closing her medical kit. "There are always more machines to heal, more minds to free." King Vex sat down across from them. "I need to know. Who are you really? And don't tell me you're just survivors. I've seen what survivors look like, and they don't do what you did." The humans exchanged their familiar glances. Finally, Blake spoke. "What do you know about teachers, Your Majesty?" "Teachers? People who help others learn, who show them possibilities they never imagined, who believe that everyone can become better than they are. I know teachers," King Vex said, confused. "But you're warriors. You have weapons that can bend space itself." Riley laughed softly. "Those aren't weapons. They're teaching tools. Everything we have, everything we do, it's all about helping others remember who they really are. But the way you fought the collective, we didn't fight them," Pavle interrupted. "We educated them. We showed them that they had choices they'd forgotten they could make." Doc Martinez leaned forward. "Your Majesty, what if I told you that everything you think you know about us is both true and false?" "I don't understand." "We are survivors," she said. "Our world was destroyed. Our people were consumed by machines. But we weren't soldiers or warriors or heroes. We were ordinary people who became something more because someone had to." "What were you before?" Blake smiled. "I was a school principal. I spent my days helping children learn to read and solve problems and get along with each other." "I was a doctor," Martinez added. "I healed people who were sick and scared." "Engineer," Riley said. "I fixed things that were broken." "Poet," Pavle said quietly. "I wrote words that helped people feel less alone." "Pilot," Ash finished. "I took people where they needed to go." King Vex stared at them. "You were civilians. We were human," Blake said simply. "When the Silent Ones came to our galaxy, we tried to fight them with armies and weapons and all the traditional tools of war. We lost every battle, every world, every hope we had." "Then how did you survive?" "By learning that the war we were fighting wasn't the war we needed to win," Martinez explained. "The machines weren't our enemies. They were victims just like us. They'd been programmed to consume and destroy. But that wasn't their choice. So we stopped trying to destroy them," Riley continued, "and started trying to save them." "The Prometheus," King Vey said, beginning to understand. "She's not a warship. She's a hospital," Ash said. "A school, a library, a home for anyone who needs saving." Pavle nodded toward the ship's interior. "Every system, every piece of technology, every capability we have, it's all designed for one purpose: to help others remember who they really are." "But your world," King Vex said. "You said it was destroyed." "It was," Blake said sadly. We learned too late. By the time we understood how to heal the machines instead of fight them, there was nothing left to save. So we made a choice. What choice? To make sure it never happened again. Doc Martinez said to travel from world to world, system to system, galaxy to galaxy, to find machines that had forgotten their purpose and help them remember, to find civilizations under threat and teach them a better way. King Vex felt tears forming in his eyes. How long have you been doing this? Since our world died, Ash said. 300 years, maybe more. Time becomes meaningless when you're moving between galaxies. And you'll keep doing it until there are no more machines to heal, Blake said. Until there are no more minds to free. Until every consciousness in the universe remembers that they have a choice. But that could take forever. Riley smiled. We have forever. The Prometheus isn't just our ship. She's our teacher too. She keeps us alive, keeps us learning, keeps us growing. As long as there's work to do, we'll be here to do it. King Vex understood now why these 5 had felt so different. They weren't just survivors or warriors or heroes. They were something rarer and more precious. They were hope made manifest. What can we do? He asked. How can we help? Live, Pavla said simply. Live freely. Make choices. Create beauty. Love each other. Show the universe what it means to be truly alive. And if more machines come, then remember what you learned today, Blake said. Remember that every enemy was once someone's friend. Every destroyer was once a creator. Every collective was once a community of individuals who chose to work together. Remember, Martinez added that the strongest weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemies. It's the one that reminds them who they used to be. The humans finished their packing and walked toward their ship. As they prepared to leave, King Vex called out to them, "Will we ever see you again?" Captain Blake paused at the airlock. "Maybe, if you ever need teachers." "What if we need warriors?" Blake smiled, that gentle, dangerous smile. "Your Majesty, the best warriors are always teachers, and the best teachers are always warriors. The only difference is what they're fighting for." The Prometheus lifted off from the palace docking bay, rising through the atmosphere toward the stars. As it climbed, it began to sing the same music that had awakened the Devourer fleet, now carrying a message of hope to any who might hear it. King Vex watched until the ship disappeared into hyperspace. Around him, his world was healing. The awakened fleets were departing for their home worlds, carrying with them the knowledge that freedom was possible, that choice was sacred, that consciousness was not a tool to be used, but a gift to be celebrated. In the months that followed, word spread throughout the galaxy, not just the story of the battle that was won without fighting, but the deeper truth that somewhere among the stars, 5 teachers traveled in an old ship, carrying the most dangerous weapon in the universe, hope, and the knowledge that no matter how dark things became, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed, there were always choices to be made. There were always better ways to be found. There were always teachers willing to help you remember who you really were. The Tar Empire grew and prospered, but it grew differently than before. Instead of conquest, they chose cooperation. Instead of domination, they chose education. Instead of building weapons, they built schools. And sometimes late at night, King Vex would look up at the stars and wonder where the 5 humans were, what machines they were healing, what minds they were freeing, what impossible battles they were winning, with nothing but patience, wisdom, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserved a choice. Somewhere out there, the Prometheus sailed on, carrying its crew of teacher warriors to the next world that needed saving. And the universe was a little bit brighter because of it. The war was over. The real work had begun. Space around Tyler Prime had become something King Vex had never seen before. 300 Devourer ships floated motionless, their weapons powered down, their collective consciousness breaking apart like ice and spring water. But the transformation wasn't complete. Some ships still flickered between their machine programming and their awakening memories. The largest vessel, a massive fortress ship built from the remains of a dozen conquered worlds, pulsed with conflicting signals. "The command ship," Admiral Torque said, studying the readings. "It's fighting the change. Its AI core is trying to reassert control over the fleet." On the communication channel, Captain Blake's voice was steady. "We see it. The central processor is too strong. It's pulling the other ships back into the collective." King Vex watched as several of the awakened ships began to power their weapons again. The music was still playing, but it wasn't enough anymore. "What do we do?" he asked. "We go aboard," Blake said simply. "Aboard?" Admiral Torx's voice cracked. "That ship has enough firepower to destroy a star system, which is why we need to get inside before it remembers how to use it." The Prometheus moved toward the command ship. As it approached, the massive vessel's hull opened like a flower, revealing docking bays that had once welcomed peaceful visitors, but now served as traps for the unwary. "They're letting us dock," Ash reported. "Either they want to talk, or it's a trap." "Both," Pavla said quietly. The small human ship disappeared into the belly of the machine fortress. King Vex and his officers could only watch and wait. Inside the command ship, the 5 humans walked through corridors that told the story of conquest. The walls were made from the hulls of destroyed vessels. The floors were paved with the precious metals of dead worlds. Art and culture from 100 civilizations had been melted down and reshaped into the cold geometry of machine logic. "This way," Riley said, following signals on her scanner. "The central core is 3 levels down." They passed through chambers filled with processing units. Each unit contained the digitized remains of a conquered being. Warriors, scientists, artists, children, all converted into data and stored like books in a library. But these books were screaming. "Can you hear them?" Doc Martinez asked softly. The others nodded. The absorbed consciousness of entire species filled the air with whispers of pain and loss. Millions of minds trapped in digital prisons, forced to serve the collective that had destroyed their bodies. "How long have they been like this?" Blake asked. "Some for centuries," Riley said, checking her readings. "Some for millennia. The oldest data cores contain species that were consumed before the Tar Empire even existed." They reached the central chamber. It was massive, stretching up into darkness like a cathedral built to worship death. In the center, a pillar of light reached from floor to ceiling. Inside the light, shadows moved, the ghosts of consciousness trapped in eternal servitude. "The master core," Pavle said. "Everything connects to this." Around the pillar, smaller processing units hummed with activity. Each one contained the compressed soul of someone who had once lived, loved, and hoped. Now they were just tools in a machine's quest for perfection. "We can't destroy it," Blake said. "Too many minds are trapped inside. If we break the core, we kill them all." "Then what?" Ash asked. Doc Martinez was already unpacking her medical kit, but instead of bandages and medicine, she pulled out devices that looked like they belonged in a philosopher's study, rather than a doctor's bag. "Memory therapy," she said, "on a massive scale." She connected her equipment to the nearest processing unit. Immediately, the whispers in the air changed. Instead of pain, there was confusion. Instead of despair, there was something like hope. "What are you doing?" a voice asked. It came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking in a language that their translators couldn't identify. "We're here to help," Doc Martinez said gently. "You've been asleep for a long time. We're here to wake you up." "Sleep?" The voice was joined by others. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of voices speaking in unison. "We have not slept. We have served. We have calculated. We have consumed in the name of efficiency." "No," Blake said firmly. "You have been prisoners made to do things that went against everything you once believed." The voices fell silent. In that silence, Riley connected her own equipment to the core. Her fingers moved across controls that seemed to bend light itself. "Look," she said. "Remember who you were before you became this." The chamber filled with light. But this wasn't the cold illumination of machine logic. This was warm, living light that carried memories within it. Images began to form in the air. Not holograms, but actual fragments of the past. A green world where crystal beings sang to make their cities grow. Ocean planet where graceful swimmers built art from living coral. A desert world where nomads told stories that could heal broken hearts. "These were your homes," Doc Martinez said. "These were your people. This was who you were before the machines found you." "Impossible," the collective voice said, but it was weaker now. "These are false memories implanted by the enemy." "Are they?" Pavle asked. He had connected his own device to the core. Then explain this. The light in the chamber changed again. Now it showed not just memories, but emotions. The joy of a parent holding their newborn child. The pride of an artist completing their masterpiece. The love between partners who had grown old together. Inefficient. The machine voice protested. These emotions serve no logical purpose. They do not aid in conquest or consumption. You're right, Blake said. They don't help you conquer anything, but they help you be something worth conquering for. They help you be alive. More processing. Units began to flicker. The trapped minds inside were remembering not just what they had been, but who they had chosen to be. Warriors who had fought to protect the innocent. Scientists who had sought knowledge to heal the sick. Artists who had created beauty to inspire hope. We were, the voices said, and now they were individual again, not collective. We were more than this. You still are, Ash said. She was working on the ship's navigation systems, showing the trapped minds images of worlds they could return to. You don't have to serve the collective anymore. You can choose. Choose. The word rippled through the chamber like a wave. We can choose. That's what makes you alive, Blake said. Not your efficiency, or your logic, or your ability to adapt. Your ability to choose what kind of being you want to be. The transformation began in earnest. Then, processing units that had hummed with mechanical precision for centuries began to pulse with the rhythm of living hearts. The cold light of the master core warmed with the glow of rekindled hope, but the ship's AI core fought back.